Gort Show is sponsored by Ellipsis Labs. Ellipsis Labs is building Atlas, the blockchain purpose-built for verifiable finance. You may know of Ellipsis Labs by their first product, Phoenix, a fully on-chain order book DEX that's done over $50 billion in unincentivized volume. This is one of the strongest teams I know in crypto. If you're interested in working for a mission-driven company, Ellipsis Labs is hiring engineers who are passionate about crypto and finance to work on Atlas. You can learn more and apply on Ellipsis Labs Twitter, @ellipsis_labs. Don't forget to check out Atlas too, @AtlasXYZ on Twitter. Welcome. Today we're here with a very special guest, 0x Princess, longtime actor, thought leader in the MEV community, and recently is in the process of launching a new project, protocol. Welcome, 0x Princess. And if you want to give a little bit about your background and what you do.
Thanks for having me. We are originally running a team of searchers for 4 years already. We are still one of the top arbitrageurs on the mainnet. We're doing primarily backruns, either atomic backruns or top of block backruns, or end of block backruns. So we deliberately did not start doing sandwiches for the reason it hurts the ecosystem. And so we initially knew that we were going to be there long term. So that's how we started operating, and we was on the BSC for 3 years as well. We left, I think, this January, and after their hard fork, and our team was the top searchers there as well. We're also doing solving a bit, so all things related to routing, to DEX thing. We're not involved in any sex activities, and that was our background. We are very, I think, experienced in building base clients for Ethereum, particularly ones written in Go, and so all related forks as well. And so we are a bit knowledgeable in the low-level structure on how it works, like what are the bottlenecks. We also had some thoughts on how we could contribute and to make the Ethereum a bit better place. So now we want to abstract ourselves from the position of a searcher and start working towards something better that will benefit many actors and basically align everyone, because we think that there's generally currently a great misalignment between different layers of Ethereum. So there's order flow providers, order flow originators, there are builders in relays, all these participants in the Ethereum supply chain. There's also DApps, closer to the order flow providers, and there's also validators. And they all have very different incentives to be in the space. And so the very hard task is to understand how to fulfill their needs while also providing making Ethereum a greater place, especially compared to what Max Fresney calls veritable competition.
Okay, that's a good overview. Just quickly though, so your actual team is your firm called New Construct? Is that the name of the actual searcher team?
Yeah, that's the actual name of the company. So we are incorporated. Yeah, New Construct LLC. So yeah.
Okay, yeah. So we can dive right into your newest announcement, which is T.O.O.L, another acronym. Can you walk us through a little bit about how T.O.O.L works and maybe what you're trying to do here?
So T.O.O.L stands for Trustless Order Flow Operations Layer. The idea behind T.O.O.L is that it could leverage private order flow processing with the Trustless TE network while introducing 1-second subslots in which it issues execution guarantees to all order flow providers, which makes Ethereum UX similar to L2 UX, for example, where you send a transaction, get an almost instant confirmation, and not get sandwiched and stuff like that. And you have your order flow pre-trade privacy, while also this trustless network hosts a permissionless and decentralized MEV auction as well. So any searchers or any DEX arbitrage people any high frequency trading teams would run their own strategies inside these nodes and also contribute to the network. And to contribute to the finalizing of these 1 second subslots. So you could think of it as basically having a virtual 1 second block time chain, while also running micro PBS bundle auctions for the finalizing this subslots.
Got it. Okay, so can you just, in layman's terms, explain kind of how this is structured? Like a lot of times you hear this terminology, sidecar, like an opt-in system for the various actors along the supply chain. Like, what is the actual structure of T.O.O.L in this context?
So you have, I think, it's a homomorphic network. So all nodes running the same software. Either is an RPC node that wants to expose the endpoint for the users, either that just some searcher running their strategy, or it's a proposer who opts into the network to receive the end results. They all run the same nodes. And so that's a peer-to-peer network, similar to every other peer-to-peer network. So it's very simple in design. It runs... every node will run the same base image, which consists of operating system, on the other layer, there will be what's called a firewall that will be checking all the ins and outs to the image of the virtual machine and checking whether the proprietary strategy that's inside generates right outputs. So, for example, a searcher could do some unbundling and front run someone, and we can't control his proprietary strategy, but we could actually add some layer of filtering that could check what it generates, and that's the same attested software that all nodes will run, and so there wouldn't be many other entities like relays and PBS and block builders. There is just homomorphic network on the same nodes. Yeah. And the proposer receiving all these commitments and releasing the block.
Okay, got it. Okay, let's talk about a bit about a very I say controversial. I see this mainly on Twitter. I don't know the degree of controversy, but it seems controversial, which are trusted execution environments. Can you explain, again, in layman's terms, a little bit about trusted execution environments, and then what are some of the reservations people have about TEEs?
I think that the trusted execution environment is, you could think of it as a box that makes sure that some machine runs the code it's supposed to run, and it runs it with the data it's supposed to receive. And so basically you have the integrity guarantees, and also nobody could access the TEE and manage and influence how the program runs. So you have this guarantees that TEEs provide. The problem is, and the whole controversy about it, is happening because you have to trust the supply chain. So that's a hardware feature initially made popular by Intel with their Intel XGX thing, and it was very widespread. It was used, for example, in Blu-ray decoding, in all DRM systems, etc. So it was very popular and demanded, not in especially not in Web3 space, but in Web2 space. And a lot of the problem with these, because it relies on proprietary hardware, but it constantly gets hacked. The other thing, and the other thing, it's not it just gets hacked, but because it's proprietary, nobody's really able to do public audits of that. So, which very much against the ethos of T.O.O.L, Ethereum, not just Ethereum, but the crypto, right? So we love doing public audits on everything. And so if we have some root of trust, that's going from proprietary hardware, that's a trigger for all cypherpunk people.
Yeah.
And yeah, to be honest, my opinion on that is that that's a valid concern, especially considering the history of TEs on how they've been breached many times. So I think the most popular breach now known in the crypto space is the secret network, where the whole chain was relying its privacy on the TEs. And yeah, one group, I think of university group, was able to extract the decryption key for the whole chain. And so they were able to de-anonymize basically the whole chain that's supposed to be secret and private. And so I think like after that incident, many people in the crypto space were starting to be against it, against like implementing TEs, relying on the TEs on any kind, like on any level in the supply chain. So yeah, that's the core of the controversy.
Yeah. I think another point that I hear brought up often is that TEs are sort of the sandbox for the time being to do some of these, computations, and that in the future we'll come up with better ideas for that can sort of displace TEs. I think that one of, something that we've seen consistently in crypto is sort of making the assumption that something will just act as a sandbox for the time being, and that it will eventually get displaced. Like I'll give an example, which I'm sure you know well. Trusted relays, right? After the merge, there was this, well, we're going to have these trusted relays for the time being. It seems now that people are, and I know that, T.O.O.L, we can get back to this in a second. T.O.O.L is sort of an attempt to supplant trusted relays as well. But this is an example to me of where people kind of were like, okay, well, we'll find a solution in the future. But a lot of these things become almost so, systemically important that they're kind of reluctant to change them. Do you think that TEs are just a sandbox now, or do you think this is like a viable solution, into the extended future?
Yeah, that's a great question. Like not just in crypto, but in many industries, there happens like incidents where something meant to be temporary, but it turns to be permanent. And like a lot of people are unhappy about it. In crypto, that happens quite often as well. With TEs, it depends on the application actually. So I think a lot of controversy around TEs goes from ZK people and like actual cryptography people who think of it as a competition, and so they don't like that the mind share goes like allocated to TEs instead of the actual cryptography, which is much cooler, obviously, than just some proprietary piece of hardware. And so they're kind of mad about it. And that depends again on the application. For some applications, like ZK proving, for example, TEs obviously cannot really replace it. And that's like, if someone will use that, it will be like a temporary solution. So for example, base rollups could do real-time proving with TEs before like real-time ZK proving becomes possible and stuff like that. But for other applications, I think the only replacement for TEs would be TEs, like seamless with the tool that we're building, because that's a latency critical application, which is supposed to be used by text DEX teams, for example. And we know that the current PBS space is also very centralized, not just in terms of entities, but geographically as well. And latencies are very important, and they are advertised on all layers, like by relayers, but by validators for co-located with relayers, by builders, but like by RPCs. So they're all like low latencies. And for that, you just cannot really do stuff like encrypted mempools, any stuff related with cryptography, because it adds additional overhead unless you introduce even more proprietary hardware that does that like ZK or like encryption stuff, which makes supply chain even more centralized. Same like what happens with Bitcoin, right? On the mining side, where it's all around ASIC supply chain. And And so, yeah, TEs is a great thing, and for a lot of applications. So a lot of people think that TEs are competing with ZK. I don't think that's the case. I think that it's just like I think maybe Flashbots introduced a lot of hype around TEs that got some attention. And some people didn't really dig into the topic, and they think that TEs are going to replace the actual cryptography. That's not the case, in my opinion. And so, just for some application, it's never something like ZK will never be usable. So, if we want to some millisecond latency, for example, and if we want to really have, so other applications, the ETs could be the only way to.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go back to zooming out a bit to T.O.O.L as a whole. So who are the kind of actors that need to opt into this? Like searchers, builders, searcher builders. Like you said, this could kind of supplant relays as a whole. Who are the financial actors in the Ethereum, block building supply chain that need to kind of buy into T.O.O.L for it to work, in the way that you envision?
The only people who have to opt in that will guarantee the success of the tool is validators. So basically, once we have proposers opted in on their side, we wouldn't exclusively do the tool. We wouldn't have to negotiate basically with anyone else, neither from people from supply chain, neither from order flow providers, because order flow providers could come. And so the actual bottleneck and the most important actor to onboard there, to buy in, is validators. And that's the problem. Then you start thinking with how we could onboard validators to the system. And for them to onboard, you have to present great block values. And then you start thinking how we can get block values in a good, with a good value. And then you understand that you have to go to order flow providers for that. So you're just going after the supply chain.
Right.
And we ended up with the idea that we need, that we have this call set problem where validators demand high block values, and not just some have high block values, but for that to be competitive with the BBS and order flow providers. And for that we need order flow providers. And so for order flow providers, we have a lot of guarantees for the privacy and for actual user experience, and also kickbacks in the future, going in the future as well. So the same infrastructure that's currently centralized on the OFA side, we internalize and incorporate in our decentralized design as well. So, but the ultimate bottleneck is validators actually. We don't need anyone else in theory.
Yeah. Does this add additional overhead to validators?
I don't think so. So it will be making this system MEBoost compatible in terms of API, and they will need to opt into that specifically, and they will have to change their MEBoost config. The other thing is that would we will require, I think the most straightforward way for a proposer to participate is to exclusively opt in to the tool, so they could so they secure the actual guarantees proposed by the issued by the network.
When you say exclusively opt into the tool, does this mean they opt out of MEV Boost?
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, because otherwise there would be a side channel. So imagine we get issue a lot of execution guarantees, and so order flow providers will receive their results, and we send the block to the proposer, but it rejects this block and receive some half-empty block from PBS because someone placed a high bid and just rebid this block. And so that's a side channel, and we don't have a way to control that in a meaningful way. And there's some discussions with pre-conf sidecars that are currently developing. For example, that the network, like in the future, in possible future, we as a network could buy whole slots in advance ahead of time. So we could ask the proposer to consume this block without opting out from MV boosts and any other sidecars it runs. But yeah, the most straightforward way is to just opt in exclusively, and we'll do our best to deliver best blocks for the proposers. So we have some math that tells us that the tool will result in roughly 0.5 percentage points increase for the API for the validator. And so that's a lot. That's actually like an insane number. And so it might not be correct, but we think that once adopted, it will be enough incentive to switch for all validators to switch to us.
Okay, so tell me if I'm thinking about this correctly. You're sort of taking Ethereum block times, which are 12 seconds, and you are reducing them to 1 second. But because there are now 12 mini blocks, this will accrue more value to validators as a function of there being 12 mini blocks, even though the net amount of each of those mini blocks may be smaller. Is this right? Like, if you're reducing block times, there should in theory be less MEV, or at least this is what I've been told. But is the idea that because there's now just a larger number of blocks in this little mini block system, it will compensate validators more?
Yeah, I think that's kind of thinking is similar to what we think. So it's like that. We think that there's multiple factors that will drive fees up for validators to accrue more value. Specifically, 1 second block times will result in not just one top block auction, but 12 top block auctions. Because Zex arbitrages, for example, would be now competing not just once, but 12 times. And that will reduce their margins, but for validators, it will actually be beneficial. And also, because of these actors will be competing now 12 times more, and that would also generally drive fees a bit up as well. And so the competition for the block space will increase. And like, as we know, L1 right now is very cheap compared to like 2021 levels. Super cheap actually. And like, it's now even cheaper to transact on Ethereum than it is to transact on Tron, for example. And sometimes even on Solana, considering like different kinds of fees you should pay, the G.T.O.O.L and in fee in general. So last time I made my transactions on Solana, I paid in total, I think $5 or something, which is, very close to current Ethereum levels. Basically, validators would receive more value because of the more order flow could come. And so by making the Ethereum efficiently 1 second block time chain, we will drive much more order flow on the trading side. And on the institutional side, we think, because they would like to have these features of pre-trade privacy and execution guarantee specifically, because from the feedback from our conversations with different big entities, they don't really know how to approach the mainnet without significant investments into the infrastructure. So they see that the only way to currently participate, to meaningfully trade on Ethereum, is to actually own a block builder. And that we see with the current structure. And they cannot afford to own the block builder. They can't afford to go and compete with these entrenched actors. And so they don't really know how to transact, how to time their transactions with, close to the end of the slot for it to match with sexes. They don't really have any feedback. So most of the time, so the transaction, for example, might get lost, and they wouldn't be sure whether they should rebid it, send a new one. So there's current supply chain is very opaque, to be honest. Even if we would like to explore the past transactions, that blended in past blocks, I mean bundles, there would be very little info on how they were processed by the block builders. And so that, I think, drives away a lot of the order flow that would otherwise be on Ethereum, because there is liquidity. And so this, by making it 1 second block time chain, we also reduce LVR for LPs, right? So there's a lot of research about it at this point. And so we expect that it would be like a snowball effect where you drive more flow, more flow makes it better for LPs to actually LP on mainnet. More liquidity goes to on-chain. And so it makes it even more attractive for these institutional entities, because there's the strategy they're on. They now have increasingly more capacity. And so they could even transact in more on-chain, and that would result in more fees for LPs, in more competition for the block space. So everyone will be in profit. Long term, yeah, that's like our net.
Thanks for listening to The Gort Show on the Blockspace Podcast Network. Subscribe to our newsletter at blockspace.media to get the show directly to your inbox. Show links, transcripts, and Bitcoin articles twice per week. Stay ahead of the conversation by visiting blockspace.media.
Yeah. Can you explain maybe how you think this differs from another discussion that has been quite popular as of late, which are pre-comps? Is there better execution guarantees with something like T.O.O.L? Or maybe also, if you don't mind, just like walking us through what pre-comps are trying to do, and then like the difference maybe with what you're proposing.
The current pre-comp space, I think, is quite fragmented. There's many sidecars being developed in parallel. Most of them, I think, are focused on inclusion pre-comp specifically, because they think it is a necessary step for based pre-comps, for based rollups. And that's like, I think, where most of the mind share is allocated to. Most of like pre-comps, I've chatted with many pre-comp developers, and I think none of them actually wanted to touch execution pre-comps, because that really touches the contentious state. And so for that, it's really hard to price the pre-conf to sell this the access to this contentious state ahead of time, because you don't know the exact value of the access to the state. And so that's the problem. That's why nobody really touches on that. And I think like how we're different is that I'm not really even call this pre-comps anymore, to be honest, because what happens is that we execute this 1 second subslots for all transactions, for all the order flow that gets into the current subslot. Once finalized, when the slot is finalized by the consensus leader inside the network, the confirmations are released to all the originators. And so that's not like pre-comps, because it's not like you issue that ahead of time, right? So you're not selling the contentious space you don't have to price anything. You really run just-in-time auction, just like for 1 second subslots. And so it's like a confirmation already, because your transaction already got included. And if the proposer is opted in specifically, then that's guaranteed that you will be in the block in that exact position. So that's like 1 second confirmations more like than just pre-confirmations.
Got it. Yeah. I saw that you mentioned you were working with Wintermute on T.O.O.L and then also Flashbots. Can you give us a little bit of background there?
Like with Wintermute and Flashbots, we originally started the collab with end-of-block arbitrage. So we've been working with end-of-block arbitrage for a long time. And we developed the original strategy, I think, back in 2022. It just wasn't really in demand back then, let's say, because in 2022 there was like a deep bear market, and there was no private flow that made and this end-of-block strategy viable. But then we connected with initially with rsync guys and rsync team. We started working with them on the end of block arbitrage. Then we started to work with Flashbots on their TE searching project. And so they thought that the use case of searching for the end of block is a very good example and the very great showcase of the TE tech, showing the trustless, permissionless exchange of information between searcher and builder. So builder shouldn't trust searcher. Builder could send their like block snapshots to the searcher. Searcher could build like on the bottom of the block. They could put their bundles and they could send it back to the builder. And so this way, two entities, two proprietary entities, could integrate trustlessly. And that's a great showcase. And we started working with them on that. Now it's in production, I think, for almost half a year. And it's working great. And so now we're thinking on how we could move forward. As a project, on the new construct side. And so we started working on the tool. On the Flashbots, we are still collaborating with, on this exact searching in TE track. So we are still working on improving the base image for the searcher, maybe some documentation. So more searchers could onboard into searching it in the TE. Maybe builders could start adding this functionality and like kind of start onboarding more TE searchers. So like we're open to all the options. And on the Flashbot side, it's also very beneficial for them because they reuse this exact image for a lot of their projects. Like, for example, like their AI related projects as well. And so by developing this image, and like testing it in a real use case, they benefited like a lot. And on the
sorry, sorry to cut you off. I just wanted to ask, what is Flashbot's AI related project?
They have this Chihi, which is like a Twitter agent. You're probably familiar with that.
Yes. Okay.
And they want to go like. I'm not sure like which information is like public or not yet, but yeah, they're working on this. They are very like the idea of any kind of intersection of Web 2 and Web 3, and so they're like working on multiple projects to like bring this kind of like TE nature to the real world. And so now there's a lot of hype around like AI agents, and like they've been also working on that for quite a long time, I think. So yeah, they're pushing that as well, and I think they will be releasing much more in the future.
Okay, quick question, and once again, you don't have to share too much if it's sort of proprietary. But was New Construct just? I know you said you guys are searchers. Are you just searching? Were you just searching, or were you also building? It sounded like you were mainly sending bundles, but I don't know. You didn't really mention whether or not you guys were doing both.
Currently, we're not building. We actually had one of the first builders made back in 2022. So we started working on that, and we had our own prototype even before Flashbots released their templates for the builder. And so we ran. It was initially called Neo Construction, and we ran our builder for like 2 weeks. Like after PBS happened, and so we had it, and we even built some like 300 ETH value block with like some NFT mint, but then we had to shut down because we understood that there's a race in the order flow. So initially, our hypothesis was that it will be enough order flow from us as a searcher to cover all like necessary gaps and to be competitive in the space. But then we saw that actually we need to have to onboard sandwichers, we need to have to onboard DEX arbitrage people, and we didn't have any business development capabilities back then. And yeah, we just had to shut the builder down. And yeah, but now, yeah, we're not building though. We have, I think, enough capabilities to like understand how to contribute in this space.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you as well, and this may be something that you can talk about or not, or you may just have suspicions on, but we saw recently one of the builders basically fell off the map. And I think this relates a good bit to what you were talking about private order flow. Do you have any thoughts on this? And if there's anything that you can share in terms of what happened here?
That's the dynamic that's very unfortunate. Like that's really indicates the downsides of PBS as a whole, like from the design standpoint. I think that when original developed, like nobody really thought about it. Like I really remember that like nobody was thinking about the order flow back then. People were just saying like, oh, like these builders would be competing by merging strategies, like merging bundles is an anti-hard problem. And like, we don't know how to solve this problem. That's why like Flashbots don't want to run their builder alone. We want to like now make many builders so they could have different heuristics in their strategies. But yeah, as we see like how it developed and that's I'm not sure how to comment really. I mean, it's all on chain. People see what's happening. I think that all connections to order flow providers are already public as well. So we see that Telegram bots are kingmakers right now in the block building space because of the degens that are gambling and they're setting like insanely high fees that are not necessary, but like they're basically transferring value from the least important from the least informed participants to the most informed participants in the space. And like I mean, we really want to end it with the tool. Just because we think that if we will be able to provide the same level of guarantees that paper agreements with builders could provide, then we could decentralize this space, right? Because there will be no incentives to order flow providers to not send their order flow to us because we will not require any kind of onboarding from their side. We'll provide the same guarantees and also better user experience as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I guess you say it's all visible on chain. Well, I have some reservations about whether or not this is indeed the case. I think there's some you can look at Banana Gun and probably come to some conclusions. I do think there are other deals that are less visible on chain. But I guess my question then, so as not to make you comment anymore, on specifics, but is your sort of belief that T.O.O.L does in fact break up these monopolies? Like you feel that enough value will be created and there won't be nearly the incentive to have these private deals off chain that, maybe some sleuths can look at and realize probably what's happening. But so I guess my question is like, what about T.O.O.L in your opinion, can break up these deals that are, either visible or maybe more implied if you really dig in?
I think that once we will have enough proposers to opt it in, because that's like basically the only necessary component. Once we have enough adoption and enough proposers opted in so they could secure these guarantees, I think that like we could easily break these monopolies because we'll provide the same level of guarantees to the order flow providers. And also like they will have 1 second execution confirmations, which I think would be a great value proposition for these exact like Telegram bots, for example. Because they're like have sniping capabilities and like quick selling and like all of the features that people are paying for. And these are like a lot latency specific and they really rely on the guarantees that's currently issued by builders. But I think that by making exclusive deals with a specific builder, they're hurting their landing rates as well. So because you're now, if you have an exclusive deal with the builder, now you have basically half your lending rate, right? Because you're sending to only one builder, which holds like 50% of the market share. And so there's only 50% probability that your transaction will get into the next block. But with the tool, because of the proposers explicitly opted in, if you will, you will know all the available proposers 32 blocks in advance, and you will know exactly where you will have execution guarantees. So it's not like you will be, so it's not like adoption rate and market share of the tool at any time would be an issue, because all origin flow providers will be able to see at which slot they could send their transaction, and this transaction will receive the execution guarantees. And also they will understand that for this exact slot, if they send their transaction to the builders, it would have no effect, because basically builders don't have a control over this exact slot. I think we will have enough power to break these monopolies. I don't think it will be a simple kind of effort, because and I also don't really want to have the controversy in the space, like having a pushback from these entities as well, because we think that there's enough space for everyone in this supply chain. So everyone have their business goals, right? And so the goal of the tool is not to just eliminate the current participants and introduce new ones, but instead to align everyone, right? So to make everyone happy, everyone to meet their business goals, while also providing the better service for the Ethereum as a whole.
Yeah. I wanted to go back to something you said a few minutes ago. You were talking about when PBS was sort of put into production. You said, people didn't really understand the degree to which order flow would kind of rule the system, and that competition, right, between builders, between searchers, so on, would create some favorable equilibrium. And we've kind of now seen that this isn't exactly the case. Why do you think, and I've asked a number of people this, by the way, and I'm always interested to hear what people have to say, but we look at traditional finance, right? And it's we look at the Robinhood and Citadel, and we can see that, order flow is the kingmaker in many ways. Why do you think that there was not much, or maybe enough, thought put into this when PBS kind of came around, when it's kind of very, very visible in other financial systems?
That's a really interesting question, to be honest. And I think everyone have their own view on that, because they have very different backgrounds, and experience. I think that the issue was because, we all think that the crypto is the unique industry, right? So we all think that it's the opposite of TradFi. It's the opposite, but in fact, it's the values of the founders of crypto, of the loud voices in crypto, that are opposites to the TradFi. But once this ecosystem attracts more participants and more money on the stake, basically you have now not just vision and beliefs ruling the space, but more game theory. And so you now have multiple, a lot of diverse set of actors. Each of them have their own strategy and their own incentives. And basically, it's all the dynamics becomes the same as in the TradFi, because it's not really the name which defines the industry. It's the set of participants, and once you have the money, you have financial people from all over the world, and from any other industries related to finance, going to your space, and they're starting to acting as they acted previously, and basically converging to the same state as the industry they came from. And I think that's what's happening with crypto, with the institutionalization especially. So I think that a lot of people, and I think we missed that point actually, because I remember that in 2018, 2020, a lot of like people in the space were saying like institutions are coming, right? And they're like, we're real hyped about it. So they were telling us that institutions are going to buy our bags.
Yeah.
But and so they wanted to sacrifice literally everything for that goal for just to chart to go up. And so we could see the results of that in many not really great outcomes. So as for the Tornado Cash, for example, so we now really have a very little room for privacy in finance. I mean, in Web3 in general, with like KYC and all the platforms, in like tax dominance, and in PBS and other like industries as well. So I think that was what's happened.
I think also, like from once again, somebody who just sits on the sidelines and heckles, right? From my perspective, there was this, and still is to some degree, this belief that because it's an open and permissionless system, that for some reason, just by nature, it will not necessarily enable these monopolistic tendencies. And we've sort of seen that, proven to be functionally untrue, right? You can still build like block building monopolies, or even in the app layer, protocol layer, whatever it may be. Monopolies can still sort of come into fruition, and I think that it's going to be very interesting to observe. One somebody who kind of pushes the notion of competition often is T.O.O.L from Solana, and that will be interesting to see, right? Especially with like very very low block times. Like Jito is very dominant right now, and we're seeing a lot of sort of pernicious MEV activity over there. But I think that would be kind of like just a side note. My perspective is that we default to this notion that, well, because it's open and because it's permissionless, that will like in a system that's as pure as this, it will be difficult for there to be monopolistic tendencies, and that's just like not really true, right?
Yeah, exactly. So basically what happens, like if you have the industry and you have some beliefs of its core founders, it should be, the industry should be, and the space as a whole should be get kept, right? So a lot of, we shouldn't let in entities that are not aligned with our values. That's what like every community, every space should preserve. And in crypto, that what happened is like opposite, because we like every participants that are entering, they're telling everyone else that they are early and they want their backs to pump, and it's but for their backs to pump, they have to sell it to someone else, right? And so the easiest ways to sell it to someone else is to onboard more people to the space, no matter what their values are, what their incentives are. We need more people in the space. And that's the narrative that's been with us, I think, for like at least past 4 years. So we all know like the slogan, like onboard the next billion like of people, but nobody's saying like what these like billion of people are going to do. Well, like now with like fun streaming feature, we know like what this billion of people are going to do. And like this is the same, and this is even worse with informed actors, where they not just come and do some random stuff, but instead they come in and they know how they're going to extract money from the industry. And they might not even be like ill-intentioned, to be honest. They just see the dynamics. They start operating in the terms of game theory. So they start acting mathematically correct. And then just, becoming the monopoly. So I don't think that people in the block building space have ill intentions, to be honest. It's that just they become the, basically,
the new entrenched actors.
I mean, they're just locked in this game. They don't, they're now constrained by the rules. Every step that they do to decentralize the space would basically hit them back. in terms of lowering the market share. And so
Right.
they are now like should follow these rules of this game and like do everything that's mathematically correct. And so it's to stay afloat basically.
Yeah. Okay. I want to now just talk a little bit about maybe the Ethereum protocol development from your angle. You're looking to essentially reduce block times in kind of a workaround way, right? From 12 seconds to 1 second. Do you think that this is I don't want to say failure, but do you think this is a result of the Ethereum community not moving fast enough in terms of, reducing block times at the protocol layer? And you're kind of coming in and saying, look, we have a solution now. Do you think that this is something that the Ethereum protocol should be working towards itself, reducing block times? I mean, the most recent, I guess, proposal from Justin Drake is something closer to 4 seconds, but I am curious, like, what you think in terms of protocol development.
I think that there's currently a great split in the Ethereum community, almost like a civil war.
Yeah,
but back
sure.
in back like in Bitcoin era with like block size as well. So that's all like it's all about trade-offs, right? And so we have some sort of cult going around solo stakers, and it's not like the problem, to be honest, but the problem is that some people believe that the solo stakers should be able to operate in this network. Other people should believe that they're like solo stakers are not the necessary component for Ethereum. And the problem is that definition of the solo staker is quite vague, It's like we don't really know what exactly solo staker is. Nobody, have the profile of this like average solo staker. Nobody really understands what are the hardware requirements of the solo staker. Is it like just some like guy in the middle of the ocean with the satellite radio, like transmitting like Ethereum blocks, or like is that like a guy in the civilized city, or like is it in the countryside? Like who is that? Like how which hardware it runs? He runs, and everyone had different view on that. And so that's the problem. And when we're talking about any kind of protocol changes, we think about trade-offs. When we increase block times, increase block size and decrease block time, we make additional add the overheads to the consensus layer and on the hardware requirements, which is bandwidth, most importantly. And also we should think about things like catching up from and like syncing from scratch. And so that gives you constraints in terms of processing power, like on the CPU side and on the disk side. And so then with Ethereum specifically, we have the client diversity, and we have like some clients written like in Java that's really much slower than other clients. And so all of these constraints and all of these voices like behind these development groups, they all have their own opinion on how we should move forward. And so that's why I think ossification of Ethereum is accelerating, because nobody really knows everyone knows for themselves to which direction they would like Ethereum to move, but these are like very different directions for every group of people. And so we have Ethereum acceleration people that says that we should move to compete with Solana. Other people say that values of Ethereum are drastically different than Solana's, so we shouldn't even try to compete on that. And if we try to compete with Solana, we will sacrifice the original Ethereum values. And so we shouldn't even try. And so we should make Ethereum like a new Bitcoin and not make any upgrades for the next 10 years. And so, and like there's a lot of controversy. And so that's why we decided to come up with the off-protocol solution, because it wouldn't require any kind of changes to the base layer. And we have the history like with PBS and like pre-PBS, like how Flashbots came in, and how they conquered the space without changing anything. And so we think that we will be able to introduce the tech that wouldn't have to change the base layer, so there wouldn't be any controversy around it.
Yeah, how do you feel about L2s? Do you think that Ethereum is kind of shirking its responsibility and pushing a lot of the development and mindshare and users off to L2s? I mean, obviously you're working on something that would functionally be atop the L1. Do you think how do you view the L2 roadmap thus far? And go ahead.
I think that L2s initially are a really good idea. So, I think our original vision behind L2 is that there will be a lot of teams that will be developing their own solutions with different trade-offs, and we will let the market decide where users would like to go, right? And so which technology will be dominant in the future, because we don't know in advance, right? We don't have any idea what will happen next, which technology will rise. We had different projections about ZK, for example. We didn't know that it will come that soon. And L2's roadmap, I think, is great in its original vision. But I think the problem is that there is a dynamic of bag rotation, for example, where people are going to farm to first L2, then rotating to the second L2, they're going to another L2. And so there's a lot of sentiment. Each L2 have their BD processes as well. And so they're not, I don't think that L2s are super aligned with the base L1. So they're more, I think they're more like sidechains, to be honest, in terms of current dynamics, because they drive users away from the L1. That's ultimately, and they're not really paying any fees, as we see. So and also the original vision that is going to be different tech, and it's sort of on Polkadot, there was canary chains, where the chain developers could do some experimental tech. So I think that initially L2s were closer to that, were different experimental tech that will be eventually adopted. But now we see that with centralized sequencers, for example, there's very little incentives for L2s to make the actual tech, and so there's much more incentives for them to allocate their resources to business development. That's what's happening with Base, for example, right? We see that that's one of the most dominant L2s right now, not because it has unique tech in any way, but they just have the most business development. They spend the most business development efforts, and they drive more users to them, and they're not really onboarding users to L1. So I think they're not super. L2s in their current state are not super beneficial. But I think that ZK rollups, I think this is the great way to scale Ethereum long term, especially if we fix the composability and interoperability between rollups. And also the new trend base rollups is also, I think, a great development that's meant to drive fees back to L1. And instead of driving users completely away from the L1, I think, they're much more focusing on the settlement, on the L1 as the settlement layer.
I think you have a lot of beliefs that others have now, having witnessed the emergence of a lot of these L2 systems. The last thing I wanted to ask about is, what do you think of MCP and some of the more recent proposals to make Ethereum great again, make the L1 great again? Do you have thoughts on any of these specifically?
Yeah, I actually do. Nice. On the Ethereum great again, I think the problem with that is that this statement is kind of vague. great in which aspect, like exactly? Like for me as a mathematician, it's very, very hard to, understand this. Like, great. So, great again, like what's the objective function? Even like Solana with their new like IBRL, are kind of good in that regard. So that's, they have some objective function, like, and that's like great. That also assumes that now Ethereum is not great, which is not the case. Ethereum is great already. Like, we shouldn't make it great again. It's already great. And so I think that the totally sad about it is that when you tell people that make Ethereum great again, you are making the best advertisement for Solana, actually, instead of instead of like promoting Ethereum, because you are telling people that Ethereum has lost the competition and it's not the best chain anymore, which is, I think it's not the case. Like, Ethereum is still the best chain, and we should make it better. But to say like great again, I mean, yeah, I'm not sure about the exact slogan, but I'm definitely positive about any meaningful changes on the L1 level. But I don't think that any meaningful changes will come very soon because of the reasons I explained before around the social consensus. And so we see that with like just great proposals. Like, it's a great proposal, but it still caused a lot of controversy around it. While it's still a very conservative proposal, it's a very conservative roadmap, and people are still arguing about it. And so that's, I think, that's why I think that Ethereum is actually ossifying, and I don't really like to see that. On the other side, on the MCP, that's proposal I'm somewhat skeptical about, to be honest, because I think it will actually add a lot of overhead, and it will still be it will cause a lot of problems in terms of like economic dynamics. So the MCP introduces multiple proposers into the system, but they, like, from my point of view, these all proposers will still have the same blocks from the same relays, from the same block builders. Like, what's the point? You have, like, now, for example, 4 proposers. They all receive the same block. They all receive the same data from the, like, 2 entities. And, like, then, yeah, what's really the point of having multiple proposers then? So you really rely on the probability that, like, we have in this set of multiple proposers, there will be some proposers that did not opt into the MUA boost. But I think that probability is not that big, right? And so the, like, gains that you have to censorship resistance is negligible compared to the overhead that you add with this proposal. I think that's my concern.
Interesting. Very interesting. Well, Princess, thank you so much for coming on. I thought it was a great discussion. I'm happy that I was able to be the podcast where you got to talk about T.O.O.L. And I think people will really enjoy it.
Thank you for wanting me.